Mr. Chairman, dignitaries here, may I recognize Mr. Chairman Nana Bafo and him, the Municipal Chief Executive KK Crunchy, Municipal Police Commander, and Municipal Fire Service Officer, the Amefima Rural Bank Manager, and all the dignitaries. If your name is not mentioned here, all protocols are observed. It is a great honor this afternoon, to be here to speak on this occasion. I have chosen this topic that I would like to talk about, and it is the role of the media in building democracy and in rule of law. I would say that one of the features of democracy is freedom of speech and expression. In Ghana, hitherto, there was this obnoxious law in our books, that is in the criminal law, which was called the criminal libel law. This law made a speech by a journalist or any person, and that speech, if it is defamation, a criminal offense. This law was used at some point in time during the PNDC era and some point to prosecute journalists. But fortunately, in the year 2001, the Akufo administration repealed this law in our criminal jurisprudence. And the repeal of this law was hailed as a trailblazer to give a broader meaning to the freedom of speech and expression as enshrined in the 1992 Constitution. During our days in school, that is in the secondary school, we were made to believe that if you come to the governance of a state, there are three arms of government. That is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. In this, our modern era, that system has changed. Now, there is another arm of government which is recognized nationwide, which is now called the fourth estate. This is the journalists. They are now being given a role in the administration of a state and the governance. And for that matter, this fourth arm of government has a greater role to play in the administration of our dear country, Ghana. In the era where we had the separation of powers, that is where we have the separate executive, separate legislature, and the judiciary. We were made to understand that this separate institution will serve to check each other. But if you go through the 1992 Constitution, there is a fusion between the legislating arm and the executive arm of government. That is why you see an MP being a minister as well. This system of government has compromised the role of the legislature in checking the executive arm of government. And now, there is the need for an independent body which will check this executive arm of government, and this is the fourth estate, that is the journalists. Despite the repeal of the criminal libel law, we have now seen another era where journalists are now being prosecuted in another law which still exists in the criminal code and which give the law enforcing agencies the opportunity to criminalize a speech by a journalist. If you go through the criminal jurisprudence, that is the Act 29, you can see that Section 208, of the criminal procedure, let me quote, this gives This law gives the law enforcer the latitude to arrest any journalist if, in the opinion of the law enforcer, the publication can cause fear and panic. In this state, it shows that a police officer can, on his own accord, arrest a journalist and say that the statement which you made on air can cause fear and panic, and arrest a journalist. If you also go through the electronic act, it also gives a police officer an opportunity to say that a journalist has made a statement which can also cause a problem. And these laws are still being used to prosecute journalists. It is our prayer this morning, Mr. Chairman, that these laws are being abused. Recently, we could remember that at Ada, a journalist was arrested and sent to court for saying that a businessman, for the sake of political, I won't mention his name, has made a statement which defames that businessman. The journalist was put into cells and he was prosecuted. Based on this law, we are praying, Mr. Chairman and the MCE sitting here. The MCE is representing the President Akufo Addo. So whatever I say to the MCE, I'm saying to the President Akufo Addo. Mr. MCE, we are saying that this law, which makes the law enforcing agency, which gives him that opportunity to arrest a journalist, because the journalist sat on air and make a statement. The police officer will sit in office and say that this statement that you made, it can cause fear and panic, without any parameters on which he is making that statement. We are saying, Mr. Crunchy, this law is against freedom and speech. We are therefore praying that this day, Parliament, very unfortunate that Mr. Nicholas is not here. Like I will tell him that Parliament should ensure that this law is repealed as well, to give meaning to freedom and speech and justice. As if this law still remains in the books, the police officer will sit in his office and tell us that a journalist speaking at Rivers or FMs is making a statement which is causing fear in Paris, and he can arrest him and send him to court. Mr. Crunchy, today we are praying that tell President Akufo Addo that this law must be repealed. Then let's go to the Electronic Communication Act, Act 775, Section 75. Let me also quote once again. A person who by means of electronic communication service knowingly send a communication which tends to be false or misleading or is likely to prejudice the efficiency of the life-saving service or to danger the safety of any person or a ship, aircraft, vessel, or vehicle commit offense liable upon summary conviction to a fine not less than 5 years in prison. This law too, once again, give the police once again to sit at his office and tell the journalist that what the statement you made on your air is also liable. You can also cause fear and panic, or you can cause some problem and he can come and arrest you. This law, there is no limit in it. It gives the police officer, the law enforcement agency, sit his own accord, tell you that the statement you made can cause a problem and he can arrest you. And by this law, a journalist can go to prison for 5 years. We are praying, we are saying that these laws are not good for freedom and justice. Mr. Crunchy, we are telling you that tell President Akufo Addo that this law must be repealed so that it will give unfettered arm to the journalists to have a free to express themselves. Now, because of time, I have a lot to say, but I will limit. I am also coming to my friend, the journalist, once again. Journalism are also required to be responsible in their reportage. Journalists are required to write and report on the truth, bearing in mind his or her duty to serve the public. The public has the right to an unbiased, accurate, balanced, comprehensive information, as well as to express themselves freely through the media. Journalists are not expected to accept bribe. If you are here, we are telling you, not that because I am on Mr. Crunchy and asking him that the laws that exist in the books are very inimical to freedom of expression. You also, as a journalist, have a role to play. That is why I have already said that you are not supposed to take bribe. You are not supposed to suppress information. Journalists should also respect the right of individual, their privacy, their human dignity. Inquiries and intrusion on person's private life can only be justified when it is in public interest. You see, this one I know some of you understand. That you just can't make a statement which affects someone's private life. You should know your parameters as a journalist. And that when you are saying something about someone, first, one of the ethics, you have to first give the person, the audience, go to him, tell him, ask him the question, let him to give the answers before. You just don't act on rumors, go on air, and make any unsubstantiated comments. We are pleading with our colleagues here, journalists, that you should know all these things. Now, one thing that I myself have observed when you watch television is the way journalists treat children. If we are here, the law tells us that the children or minors are not supposed even to be interviewed. They are not supposed even to be, their pictures to be on air or maybe in the media space. So we are here once again telling you that you colleague journalists here, when there is a matter affecting children, you should know how to go about it. Before you talk to a child, first you have to seek permission from his parent. You have to seek permission, if it is not the parent, the guardian, who the child is, whose control the child is under. So we are now entreating you, our colleagues here, to ensure that children, that is why if you come to the court, defilement cases and other issues concerning children are heard in chambers. We don't bring their matters in public for it. So we are now entreating our colleague journalists that matters, you should also know that matters affecting children, the police officers know it very much. They don't even send their children into police cells. The law tells us that if a child offends, you even have to grant him a bail and give the child to the parent, even when the child has committed offense. You don't have to put him inside, give him to the parent and let the parent bring the child. So you journalists, you also have that obligation to ensure. Let me give you a typical example. When this footballer, Achu, died, there is a journalist who went and interviewed Achu's son. And he asked him a question at the funeral ground. It was wrong. That journalist received some backlash. And I am telling you here that all of you should take cue from that, and we shouldn't commit that offense, that you can't interview a child or a minor like that. Now, let me take this opportunity once again to also elaborate a bit on the role of media in democracy. In the Fourth Republic, we have seen that there is suppression of information. That one I have to say, Mr. Crunchy, once again, I will come to you. The media need our protection. The media is the only agent in this our institution, this dispensation, who hold the government accountable. And one of these rules is to hold the government responsible to the people. Now we know just recently this government is going to IMF. The government is going to IMF simply because, Mr. Crunchy, you are Akufo Addo here. Mr. Crunchy, you are going to IMF before because the parliament of this state, which was supposed to check the excesses of this government, failed us. The parliament fails us because they failed to check the borrowings of the government. And the government excessively borrowed, and we are now going to IMF. Now, this role, if parliament is failing us, then we are giving this role to the journalists. The journalist has to come out and tell us that since the parliament is failing us, the journalists should take the mantle to protect the interests of the Ghanaian public. We are also, I'm concluding here that the media has a crucial role in our discourse because the independence and information and supporting the transparency process is the only role the journalists should. We are now according to the journalists because in this our democracy we have seen that the principle of the fusion of the legislature and the executive is not helping our cause. We are now relying on the journalism and the journalists and the media to now hold the government accountable. In this noble profession that we are and the obligation we are conferring on the journalists, we are praying that it is our hope that journalists will do this thing. But in doing this, we are going to talk about one particular thing which is problem facing the journalists here. Not even in Amenfiman, but the nation as a whole. That is the salary of workers on the journalist business. The salary. If I am talking, I know today there are some of the owners of the media houses here, Rivers FM and Co. They are here. For the journalists to be able to perform each role in this democratic dispensation, the salaries of the journalists must be enhanced. If the salaries of the journalists is not enhanced, the propensity and the possibility of a journalist going to take solid and going to take bribe and going to be influenced by the well-being people in the society will be high. And this is going to compromise the true work which the journalists are expected to do. We are therefore calling upon media houses and businessmen who are operating media houses to ensure that even the SNIT benefits of journalists must be paid. There should be life insurance, because there should be life insurance for journalists. Because we can see that if you take the army, the police, whose work, and the fire service, they are here, the immigration, whose work are very risky, the next people who will come is journalists. If you see the number of journalists who have been killed in this country in the past 4 years, you will see that journalists must be given insurance because they have children, they have wives. In the course of their work, if they die, something must be done to protect their children. And this will go a long way to help them in undertaking their special assignment. Journalists, if you go to our area, for example, there was our Menfi here in the western region where the Galamsey is prevalent. It is only the journalists who can expose this menace. We are therefore praying, we are therefore saying that for them to undertake this institution, this work, this noble work, they must be encouraged, there must be benefits, there must be some incentives for them to perform this work so that our environment will be saved. The last thing that I'm going to say is that for a journalist to do his work effectively, there should be a scholarly journalist, a journalist who understands the work he's doing. It is not only someone who has gone to JRG who can be a good journalist. There are people who never went to JRG, but they are good journalists. I am now calling on the media houses, the owners of these media houses, to provide scholarships for these journalists so that some of them can improve their education. Some of them can be given the opportunity to study outside this country. Even I am pleading on Mr. Crunchy, the MCE, that in his annual or end of year service, end of year parties, he should institute some present or some award for a good journalist in his community, because their work, his work, can never be successful without the work of the journalist. He can never achieve what he intends to do without the work of journalists. I am therefore calling on the MCE, Mr. Crunchy, that this year, 2023, at the end of the year 2023, you should sit down with these journalists, talk to them, provide them incentive, and at the end of your party, if anything at all, out of your common fund, you provide some scholarship for one journalist every year. And I know this is not beyond the DC. I know the DC, DC, I attended the same school with him at Takwa Secondary School. He's my MC, sorry. So what I am telling him, I know. He's a scholar. So the MP has come, Nicholas. Honorable Nicholas. Yes. We are also calling upon you that you liaise with the MC to ensure that the journalists in this your constituency are well protected. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity given me to speak.